Hi, my name's Elizabeth Thomas. I am an art teacher, an artist. I'm married to an artist, Craig Thomas. I live in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And we've lived here for 36 years. I've lived in Missouri all my life. I was born in Columbia, Missouri, and my family has moved across the state. When I met Craig, we decided to move to Cape Girardeau so I could finish college. We moved here when my daughter was 6 months old. So we've been here ever since. I've taught for 29 years. I've taught in close to the Kansas City area. I've taught in Cape Girardeau, Sikeston, Missouri, and now I'm teaching in Scott City, Missouri. And this is my 7th year at Scott City. My first year of teaching was just, I had to get my foot in the door, so I moved across the state to the Kansas City area. But after that first year, I came back to Cape Girardeau. That's a little bit about me. As a child, growing up, I've always been around art because my uncle is an artist. He just passed away last month, but he lived a very full life, and I learned quite a bit from him. Basically, he told me, draw whatever you see. So draw whatever is around you. And as a kid, I would be stuck in my room drawing all the time. I think I knew I wanted to be an art teacher when I was in 5th grade. I had an art teacher, Miss Byram. She was kind of a beatnik personality, really laid back. And she had an art club, and I was part of that art club. And it was at that time in my life, I thought, this is what I want to do when I grow up. I want to be an art teacher. I wasn't thinking artist, but I was definitely thinking art teacher. And then growing up, my parents, both of them, encouraged me to continue my art. They expected me to go to college. My dad especially, he didn't get to finish college. My mom didn't go to college. That was something that he wanted for his daughters. And I have 2 sisters. Both of them went to college. Both of them got their masters. And I got my master's too. And I think we did that because that was what my father wanted. And he passed away in 84, a year after I graduated from high school. And because he really pushed education and wanted that for us, I think we did that to honor him. Both of my sisters are accountants, which is really different than me. My father was really good in math and science and that kind of thing. And my mom was she was the reader. She read a lot. So she sort of educated herself, I think. But I think the 2 complemented each other, and they were very nurturing, both of them. My mom was a stay-at-home mom for the most part, and my dad worked outside the home, and he worked all the time. We rarely ever saw him. But when we did, if anytime he could be where we were seeing what we were up to, he was there, and he bragged about us. He loved us. And so we were lucky in that sense. We had a family that were well connected with each other and shared experiences with us and got us out in the world to see things. So, and I can remember getting ready to go to college. My dad told me, now, when you go to college, you know that you're going to have to take a life drawing class. And he said, And so that means that they're going to be in the nude. And he said, but it's a subject matter that you're drawing. It's not anything but a subject. And he said, and once you start drawing, that's what you're going to concentrate on is making sure that you get the correct proportions and things like that. So don't be nervous about that. And I think he knew that because he knew my uncle well, and he had tutored my uncle in math when he was going to the Kansas City Art Institute. So that was something I think he felt like he needed to tell me. I went to a small college in close to the Kansas City area, and I went into education and art education. So that's what my degree is in, elementary education and art education.
You're working with so many mediums. Which one came first?
Gosh, that's a good question. I think a lot of it, what I did was because of the classes that I took in college. So as a teacher, you have to teach everything. And so I probably began drawing, and I love to draw. I can't say that painting is my strong suit, but the medium that I love the most, I suppose, is mixed media. And I guess I really like to work sort of a pop art technique. And so I started off making these boxes. And so the pop art came with the objects that went into the box. And then the art is what I put next to those objects. So for example, one piece I did was called Lucky Ducks, and it has all these little rubber ducks. And in the background, there's just sort of like signage. I wanted it to look like it was a carnival. And so that's what I do. I sort of pick an object, whatever it might be, and then with that object, I put artwork in the background of that box or that container. Another piece that I did, and this is sort of a political piece, and I don't want to get too political, but it was called Let's Play Army, and it had army men at the bottom of the box, and it had the eyes Bush. He was looking down on the army men. And so that was during the time where, we were sending our troops off to war. It was after 9/11. I really didn't think that we were going to war for the correct reasons. And so that was a political piece. It was a statement. And sometimes my pieces are statements. Other times they're just playful and fun. And it's just a reminder of things that happened in my childhood. There's one piece and it has marbles. And as a little girl, I can remember going to my grandmother's house and getting the marbles out. There's a painting, a close-up of the painting of the marbles. And then in part of the box, it has the marbles. And I did that one because when I was a little girl, we would play with the marbles. We would play Chinese checkers, and we would just, I don't know, I love the sizes of them and the texture inside the marble. And so I guess that's what interested me. And I would sort them, and it's like getting buttons and sorting buttons by color and size. So that's why I did that piece, kind of in memory of my grandmother. I think I know I had other pieces. One was with bubble gum, and it was Hubba Bubble bubble gum. And then on the inside, it was sort of paying homage to Andy Warhol with the different techniques of drawing the bubble gum. So there's a drawing, and then there's Photoshop of it, and that kind of thing, changing the color and stuff like that. I think that one, the one with the bubble gum, and then the one with the Tootsie Rolls were my first two pieces. Again, it's just a memory. I can remember going with my great grandpa down to the corner store and getting candy with him. We would get, we would get Tootsie Rolls and things like that, and it was just the memory of him and us connecting with him at that time.
You are working primarily with found objects?
Yes, yes. So sometimes I will find a container, and then with that container, I'll do artwork with that. So one example was after Maya Angelou passed away. I had this bird cage, and so I had already had the bird cage. And after her passing, I just admired her so much as a person. She was from the St. Louis area, and we were in downtown St. Louis on that day. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do something to pay tribute to her. So I made this beaded bird, and I put it inside the bird cage. And then I took her poem, I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, and I shredded it. And then I put that at the bottom of the cage. And then on the outside of the cage, I put a bird's nest with a really colorful bird. And there was a striking difference between the bird inside the cage and then the bird on the outside of the cage. The freedom of the bird on the outside, the colorfulness of it. That would be one example of something where I took a container or an object and I made a piece of artwork. Another example is one that I have here in the house, and it's a medicine box. And on the inside of the medicine box, I put pictures of my family. And then on the door of the medicine box, I have a family tree with little trinkets, that I can put pictures in. And so it would be family pictures inside these little jewelry pieces. And then on the outside of the box, I just left the box as is, but going through the shelves, I have this root that's going through the shelves, and it's going all the way through from the top of the box all the way to the bottom, and then you can see the roots at the bottom of the box. So I think I probably titled it Family Roots or something like that.
Are those your supplies?
In the background, yes, I've got some of my I do a thing with these a Rolodex, and so I have artwork in the Rolodex. So right up here, let's see if you can see that. Right up here, I have different Rolodexes that I have artwork in. And anyway, and then I have a lot of junk, I feel like, but I think maybe I'll use it someday in a piece of artwork. So, I guess I collect things. I'm a collector. As an artist, my husband does the same thing. He has so much stuff. I can remember when we first got married, he always said, less is more, less is more. And I said, yeah, well, we have a lot of more. We don't have less. So yeah, in my little studio space, I guess I have a lot of little things for my artwork. I tend to, I guess,
What about that mask? I saw that you're doing masks.
This is a mask. Here, I'll bring it down. This is a mask that a friend of ours gave us. Um, and she did because she knew that I had done a series of masks for my thesis. Her relative was in Africa, was a missionary in Africa, and in their passing, she gave me the mask, which was a really beautiful gift. Um, some of my masks, uh, I have a couple in here, but and they're one is at the very, very top. I don't know if you can see that here. Oh, it's just kind of at the top. Can you see that? I can't tell. Anyway, now I did a series of masks for my thesis, and it was self-portraits influenced by the African ceremonial mask. And I guess I had always admired the work. I like other cultures. And so um just looking at the masks that they make, and I know they don't make it as something to put up on their wall. It has a lot of meaning behind it. So I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do self-portraits from my childhood to adulthood. So I did one with my fourth grade class. We each made animal masks, and they were out of paper mache. And I thought that's perfect because um, as children, that's what you would work with. You know, you want to work with paper mache and make something three-dimensional. So they had to make their own mask, and then they had to say why they made the mask that they made. What did it represent? So I made a giraffe mask. So with my fourth grade class, I made a giraffe, and my students made their own mask, and it I wanted them to make an animal mask and then tell why they made it. And I told them that I chose the giraffe because I like how elegant they are as an animal that is so elongated. You would think that they're clumsy, but I don't think that they are. And the way that they run is very graceful. So I chose the giraffe mask, and that was my first mask that I made for my thesis. And then I made an adolescent mask, and I happened to be teaching. Happened to be teaching in junior high at the time, and I sort of almost dreamed about it. It was a dream where I made this really large mask, and I thought that's perfect for adolescents because their life is so full of drama and angst, and it's just a very emotional time in their life. And so when I made that mask, I was researching African masks, and the Songye Society, they make masks for their children going into adulthood. And then it has stripes on it that are going down from their face. And anyway, so I made one similar to theirs, except much, much larger. And that was also paper mache. And my students made a mask at the same time. Like a lot of times, if I'm going to do something like that, I'm going to be doing it at the same time as my students so that they're seeing how I work, my technique, and then they can kind of follow along, but they'll get ideas. I made a motherhood mask because I had two children, so the mask is carved from wood, and it has my two children on top of my head. I made a death mask, and it really wasn't. It really in my series, it wasn't a death mask. It was just aging. It was showing my aging compared to my children's. And that one, we made pouring plaster over my face and then putting the clay into that mold. And my children let me do that to them, which I was a little surprised, but they allowed me to make a mask of them in that technique. I also made a series called for in honor of my father, and it was 5 masks for the grieving process, and they were small ones, and that was kind of modeled after another society who used small masks to teach their children the ways of life and to teach them how to be better people. So I think that whole series was it was a learning process for me, and I was working in a lot of different mediums, but I was also learning about myself as a person and the stages of life I've gone through. I did one as a marriage mask for Craig and I, and I don't know. I think I ended up doing 12 different masks in the end.
You have been teaching for almost 3 decades. You've seen a lot of changes.
Yes.
Would you be able to highlight a little bit of these changes in this short interview?
Yes. Well, I can try. I have been fortunate enough to teach pre-K through 12th grade. And I have to say, I love teaching all the way up. There's different facets of every age that I find interesting. I think a lot of people think the pandemic has definitely changed education. That's probably the biggest change that has happened to education since I've been in education. And I think part of what happened was we were so disconnected from each other. And then when the kids came back, I think they just didn't even know how to act with one another. And so I think that has changed the way we teach. I think we have to be more forgiving in some ways. And I think that we're really, in my school, I see that we are trying to wrap our arms around the kids that are probably having the most trouble. We kind of surround them with psychiatrists and counselors and teachers that have much smaller class sizes. And then in the regular classroom, and I don't know if I should say it like that, but I think that's hard too. It's hard for all of our kids right now. I think that they're just adjusting to a new way of learning. And of course, computers have played a huge impact on education. When I first started teaching, we didn't have computer classes, and now we, of course, do. And now we're one-to-one with computers. And unfortunately, I don't know that I think that's the best thing for our kids. I still think reading and picking up a book is important. I think that tactile relationship between you and the book and turning the pages is important. And I think the illustrations for children, I think that's very important too. I think that reading is one of those things where you're using your imagination and you're picturing things in your mind. And so I tend to think that computers have sort of taken us away from that. And I think that's sad for education. I don't know. I think there's something to be said for, reading, writing, and arithmetic. And sometimes I think we try to push a lot more at our students when we should go back to some of the basics. But, we're moving on. We go with what's happening at the time. During the pandemic, we were out of school from March all the way to the end of the school year. So we just stopped teaching. I felt so guilty about that. I felt like what am I doing? I need to have a purpose. And I started at that point making masks for people to wear, cloth masks. And I know there was that whole argument of the, cloth mask versus this mask, but it was something I could do to help. And so I did that. And then when we came back, it was an adjustment for our students. I don't know. And I think it was an adjustment for teachers. And then of course there's school shootings that are happening. And we just recently in the United States had another school shooting in Nashville. And I think that's something that teachers and children think about. It's a fear that we have. And we have drills to practice going to a safe place, or if you can, get out of the building. And I think it's a shame that, we have tornado drills, and we have fire drills, and we have earthquake drills, and now we have intruder drills. And I think, okay, I believe I've got 2 more years left of school, but it could happen. It's a reality in the United States, unfortunately. That's one more thing that plays into education.
How do you think art could contribute to helping the younger generations not just cope with these traumatic situations, but also express themselves and even prevent these situations?
Obviously, you can teach through art. I mean, it is a way of expressing yourself. And I think that's it's a trend in art, I think, that we have now that we didn't used to. I feel like with the masters, their art was beautiful, and they were learning these beautiful techniques. And nowadays, we use techniques to teach in our art. So, the artwork has words, or it has symbolism and things like that. And yeah, I think that through art, you can almost lose yourself. So if a student is interested in art and they have a passion for it, I think that that's almost a way to escape some of the things that are happening around us. And obviously, like through sports, you can, through music, you can, the visual arts, theater, reading a book, those are ways of escaping, I suppose. But through art, you can teach, like you said. So it is a tool to teach our students about how to change the world, to make it a better place. Art is one of those things that I think we almost forget the significance of it. I've had students ask me, well, why is art important? And I tell them, because without it, what would our world look like? It would be plain. It wouldn't be as colorful. it would be dull. I mean, and art is something that you wear, you live in, you go to school and someone designed that building. Art is all around us. It doesn't have to be a painting on the wall, but what's wrong with that? I think that's great. Art is in everything you see. It's in architecture. It's in the clothes we wear, how we wear our hair, everything. So that's why art's important. It makes us better people. Yeah.
We live in a world where violence is almost normalized. Schools are hiring more security guards.
Right.
They are hiring maybe more counselors, more psychiatrists or psychologists. Would it help if this funding would go more into arts and other areas that so children, and of course supplies and other things like free meals or things like that.
Right. Yeah, I think that you could be right. I think that when our kids feel safe, when they feel loved, that you don't need all of those other things. You don't need a security guard. And unfortunately, it's not the school that's the issue. It's what's outside the school that is the issue. And we can teach our kids and we can love our kids. I think it's the adults that need to be educated. They are the ones that are causing these problems. It's not the children. But I suppose, we're the ones bringing them up. And if we're bringing them up, then we just have to surround them with love. But the arts and music and theater, those are ways for children to express themselves and to kind of tell us what they're thinking so that we know how to help them. And it's true, if we supported the arts in the way that we should, maybe we wouldn't have some of the problems that we have. It's a question that I think until we decide what's more important, is it our children or is it weapons? We're going to have that discussion for a very long time. I don't understand why that's the issue, why guns are more important than children's lives. I don't understand that, but I don't know.
You are also participating in chalk festivals.
I participate in chalk festivals sometimes. Not as often as Craig does. He gets to get away quite a bit to do them. But from time to time, I'll go with him and do a street painting festival. It's very grueling. It's one of those activities that you kind of have to psych yourself up for. I guess it would be like running a marathon. You kind of have to prepare yourself physically to do that. And Craig is probably he loves to do it. I'm not as interested in that. I like to be with him, and so I'm willing to get down on the concrete with him and work on something of that sort too.
You're also working with wood.
A little bit, yeah.
And these boxes that you're doing, the boxes,
yes.
how did you come up with the idea of doing these boxes?
Okay, so for the boxes, a lot of times it comes first with the object. So let's just say I decided I did one with cowboys and Indians. So I had that first. And then I wanted to decide how big I wanted to go. With that one, I wanted it to be long. Um, and so I drew it out first, drew out how I wanted it to be. Did I want the cowboys and Indians to be on the bottom, or did I want them to be on the top? And then what imagery did I want to have with it? And so that's kind of how I plan it. I did one with Pez dispensers. They're like these little plastic containers that hold candy inside the dispenser, and then you pop the head open and it comes out. It's really silly. And they're colorful. So that was it. With that one, I took the image of the wrapper, and I used that, and that went at the top, and then the Pez dispensers went at the bottom. So it starts off with the object itself, and then I kind of try to figure out the placement of it. Where is it going to, how is it going to go, and how is it going to connect? And so some of the work on the inside is Photoshop, and some of it is drawings. I did one with a barrel of monkeys. You know what I'm talking about with that? They're colorful plastic monkeys inside this barrel. So I have the monkeys hanging from a hook inside the box. And so on one side are these hanging monkeys. And then on the other side of the box, I have a drawing of the monkeys hanging down. And that one, I painted it with watercolor paints, and just did a light wash of black, and then and then I think I drew the monkeys with charcoal over that wash on that watercolor paper. So, you know, it just depends on the object and then the shape of the box itself. Like with the hanging monkeys, I wanted it to be dramatic, so I wanted it to be long. And then I have two smaller pieces that go with that. And one of them, I have a postcard of monkeys. And I found it online and ordered it for that piece. So, you know, it just depends on what the object is as to the size the box should be, if that makes sense. I did a series of, and this one, I don't even know if I have a good picture of it, but I found these boxes. They were red boxes in an antique store, and the antique store was using the boxes just as displays. So I went up to the owner of the antique store, and I asked him if he was willing to sell those boxes, because I wanted to do an art piece with those boxes. And it was just kind of a funny thing, because we went to the antique store, and I'm walking home from, we're downtown, so we're walking home from the antique store, and I said to Craig, those boxes would be perfect for this project that I'm thinking about. And I had, as a kid, my grandma, my father's mom, would send us handkerchiefs on Valentine's Day. And I said, those boxes would be perfect for that project. And he said, well, let's go back and see if he would sell them to you. So we talked to him, and he said, yes, he would sell them to me. And then we went back and we picked them all up. On the inside of the box, I have a clothesline that goes across the inside of the box, and then it has a knot on the outside of the box to hold the clothesline. And then I have the handkerchief hanging over the clothesline. And then kind of on the outside of the box, I have a Valentine that she sent us. And then in the very background of the box, I have letters that she mailed to us. So I think I ended up with 13 boxes. And then I found the letters that she had written to us and the handkerchiefs that she had sent us and Valentines that she had sent us. And so it's a series, and it's all in memory of my grandma Lottie.
Your career seems to have had certain phases, you know, the box phase, the basque phase. What phase are you in right now?
I think right now I'm working with the Rolodex cards. I started doing those Rolodex before the pandemic, and I was going to do one every day. And then the pandemic happened, and I stopped because, again, I thought there's nothing happening here except what's going on outside. And probably that would have been the best time to make those cards. But like I said, I wanted to do something really useful. And so I started making my masks. And I think I ended up making 2,000 masks during that pandemic. And I sent some to hospitals and nursing homes. And I made sure that I had one for every teacher when we came back to school. And then I started making them for my students. So I stopped making those Rolodex cards, and now I've kind of picked up on it again. And the Rolodex cards are they're like the size of an artist trading card. Um, they're small enough, and you can use small little things to go on them. And it's just a nice little mixed media piece. Um, and so, and then I sort of got caught up in the whole thing of collecting Rolodex, a Rolodex. And so I have different types of Rolodex and things like that. I just got ridiculous with it. But it was a fun project to do. And like I said, there was one for every day. And I would do some for holidays and things like that. And, you know, I did some like for my grandmother, or for my father, or for my daughter, or my son, you know, on their birthday, or things like that. It was just, and then I was doing a project with my third and fourth graders, and they were making cards, and they were the size of like a playing card. And so while they were doing that, I was working on my Rolodex cards. And theirs was, we called it a narrative necklace. And so I was talking to them about, it has to say something about you as a person. And I want you to bring things in that connect to you. And then we would use magazine images, and they could tear them out and glue them onto the card. So, you know, it was during that time as well. So I don't know. I think a lot of times the things that I do have to do with what I'm teaching at the time, or the grade that I'm working with at the time, or like one thing leads to another. For example, the boxes, the pop art boxes, it was like going from that where it was very contained. I felt like I kind of wanted to spring away from that. So then that was when I started doing the assemblage pieces with found objects. So I think one thing sort of leads to another. It's not like I just stop and I'm done with it, but it's more about what's happening at the time, if that makes sense. So
I noticed that spirituality and faith are important to you, how can you use them, or how do you use spirituality and faith in your profession?
One piece that I did, again, it was in a container. It was a clock box, an empty clock box. And I thought, that reminds me of sort of like a grotto, something that you would see in Mexico, their art, with Mary, the Virgin Mary. And so with that one, what I wanted to do was talk about motherhood and her part in raising her son. And so I used Bible verses from about her in there. There's so many stories about Mary. It's not just the fact that she gave birth to him. It's how she raised him, and how she gave him his freedom to teach. She didn't stifle him. She was the vessel for him. But she also was his teacher too. And she, as a mother, you have to let go at a certain point. And she had to do that. We saw that in the stories about her as a mother. I think what happens in our life happens for a greater reason, for a greater purpose. And we don't always understand why. And I don't think that we need to understand why all the time. I think that it will eventually come to us. We will find out eventually. We just have to sort of live through that moment. And, I think about going back to when my dad got sick and when he eventually passed away. And for my mother and for my sisters and I, it brought us closer together. It was a huge event that happened. We didn't really understand why it happened, but I think in the end, what it did for us was it gave us a connection to each other. And I think, that's what you have to do. You have to learn from what happens. I was listening to something on NPR, and it was a man he was in an accident, and he immediately knew that he was paralyzed. He had this heavy object fall on him, and he knew immediately that he had no feeling in his legs. And that could have been something that just ended his life, but it didn't for him. It was something that made him appreciate life. He looked at it as, hey, I lived through this, and this is the beginning of my new life. And I think that's what you have to do. Like, the experiences that happen, they happen for a reason, and they can make you a stronger person, I think. And for me, it's a tool to teach my students. This happened to me, but it didn't make me stop what I'm doing. It made me want to push forward as a person. So, it's a choice you make, I suppose.
You said that you're going to be teaching another 2 years.
Yes.
And after that, you're becoming a full-time artist?
Yes. Yes. I think I probably still will teach. I think I will teach private lessons, but yes, I think I'll be able to do both more often. I'll be able to do both.
So you have done individual books, you created books?
Yes. I did a series of books, bookmaking. I took a class with one of my college professors, and after I took the class, I enjoyed it so much. I think I liked the paper, the materials that you use to make the books. So I've made Coptic books, I've made long stitch books, um, I've made accordion fold books, books in boxes. So quite a few different types of books. And some of them I've sketched in. I have one book where I'm doing lots of Zentangle drawings in them. Um, and, uh, and then I've sold a lot of books too. But, and yeah, little tiny books that you can wear as a necklace or things like that. But, yeah, bookmaking. And then I've taught classes where, my students have learned how to make books.
During your career, things have changed in the way we perceived various situations, very individualities. What was okay 30 years ago was no longer okay 15 years ago or now. We're constantly changing, and we are thinking, some people think now it's worse than before, while others are thinking it's better than before. Of
Right.
course, 10 or 15 years from now, things might change. We don't know how.
Right, right.
How should we welcome or embrace these changes?
So I agree with you. I mean, I was just talking about, and this is going to sound silly, but I was watching Top Gun, and we watched the first one, and then I fell asleep during the second one, but it has changed, and even a silly thing like that has changed our perspective on how we look at women, how we talk about women, um, uh, and maybe that's a small example, but it's true. I mean, I think, and I think that we think that we're so progressive, but I think when you think about Black Lives Matter, um, we have not grown that much as a people. Uh, I think we still view people by the color of their skin when what we should be doing is looking at them as a human being and what they can contribute to the world around us. I mean, we are in a vessel. We live in a vessel. We live in the vessel that we were given, whether we be black, white, whatever it may be. But every one of us has something to contribute. So I wish that people could look at each other that way, like basically like little children look at each other. You're a person. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. And then my grandson is trans. I was talking to my daughter about how he is as a person. And I think that he's a very sensitive person. I think that he has had to be a sensitive person because of how he's treated as a person. And so because of how he is treated as a person, I think that he is more compassionate to other people. And so I don't know. I don't understand why we judge one another, why we try to pick people apart. You know, you're born into whatever it is you're born into. You could as easily be born in poverty, or you could be easily have been born into royalty. You just don't know. It's what you are given. So with that, why judge the person next to you? You know, I don't quite understand that. But as a society, I don't see us actually growing that much. I think we're taking baby steps, and then we take a few baby steps forward, and then we take it away from ourselves. I mean, if you think about um, the for a woman to have the right to choose, I mean, we had a right to choose, and then that was taken away from us. So it's like we went several steps forward, and now we're being taken back. And so, I know things have changed, but we have a lot of growing to do as a world, as a world.
What would you like to see in the near future in art?
In art. Oh gosh. Um, you know, I think that the art that we have around us, it's beautiful and it's inspiring. Um, and you know, I guess what I would like to see is people being more educated to the arts. Um, I know that Craig and I, when we went to Italy, um, the people knew the art. They would walk around our street paintings and they could name who the artist was and what the artwork was. And I guess I would like to see that in the United States, where our children know what it is, they've seen it, they can recognize it just by looking at it, know who the artist is, care about that. I think that's something that we as a culture, um, that's our problem. Like, we haven't taught our children to appreciate art in a way that they can see it and recognize it and know who the artist is. And maybe that's because we're not surrounded by it. I suppose, if I were in a city living in, say, Chicago or New York or even St. Louis, my students would recognize artwork more than they do here. We don't have art museums. We have art galleries. So the only way they're seeing, the only way that they're seeing recognizable artwork is by who their art teacher is, and what she's teaching or he's teaching at the time. And I think as an art teacher, and I guess I'm going back to what I do, I think it's important for us to teach students how to draw, how to paint, those techniques that were taught hundreds of years ago. But then also we have a lot of new ways of making art and expressing ourselves. And that's just as important. And maybe that's why our children don't recognize masters' works, because we're seeing so many different types of artwork out there. And so it's an abundance of art, and it's an abundance of ideas. And I think that's important too. So I guess in a sense, change is good and we should go with it. But I think also learning the old ways, that's important too. So.